Western Theological Seminary, and work experiences shape his understanding of soil, food, work, life, and community. Among the too many things Andy does, he enjoys spending time watching his 2 kids' sports activities, tending to his bees and chickens, gardening at home, and talking about all those things to anyone who will listen. Thank you for being with us today, Andy.
Thank you. Here's this for you.
Thank you.
I don't need that anymore.
Yeah.
I did bring treats today. This is a good start to bribe you all with some goodies. If you don't mind, just dipping your hand in. Are you guys good with that? If you don't, then pass. These are microgreens. We've got arugula, so it's going to be on the spicier end. It's got a radish and arugula, so take a little bit, take it all, but share. I do have extra stuff over there it was last week's farmer's market, so it's kind of old, but goodies. I figure I can bribe you with some treats, right? It's not donuts or anything like that. So where do we start with this? All right. Here we go. And then I've got a little bit of arugula, so we can try one, none, or whatever. We'll sample. We can send the spinach on, whatever. But all right. Thank you for allowing me to be here. My name is Andy Rozendaal. I'm the farm director at 8th Day Farm. That's kind of where I spend a lot of my time in the day. Is this too spicy?
No.
You're good.
Perfect.
Okay, good. All right. Wakes you up in the morning. That's good. That's where I spend most of my days, and also in my heart too, the passion for community and growing healthy food. And so I'm excited to be here and share a little bit about my journey with food, journey with the land, and then maybe where we go as a community, what that might look like. I'm not sure if what you're expecting to have me share with you. I said I could be an expert at something. I don't sometimes feel like I am an expert. And so I'm just kind of sharing my constant learning with you. So I'm sharing my humbleness in that way, that I'm not, knowing it all and have it all put together with this, fancy PowerPoint with all these points that we should do. Not at all. I think this is a little bit of an exploration together. So we'll start here. So this Foundation for Healthy Communities, again, I believe it starts with the soil. And this is a garlic planting. My theme in the PowerPoint has a lot of garlic planting experiences, right? So this past year, the site is right up the road on Pine Avenue, one of our locations that we farm at, so 709 Pine. And this is the beginning of the day. It's funny because I get one picture for the whole day. This is it because I took it at the beginning. There was more volunteers that showed up that day and kind of planted all these rows. Each row has about, I think, 800 heads of garlic. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I don't know. I can't, 7 or 8 in there. So do the math. It's a lot of garlic that we grow. We grow that for our CSA, which stands for Community Supported Agriculture, and that people buy a portion of the share into the farm, so you can get you access the food at the farmer's market or at our farm location every single week from June to October. You just get a little taste of what's in season at that time. So there's any members out there? We got a few, I know, right? So that are participating in that. Yeah, thank you. And so if you want to be a part of the farm and taste a little bit of what's in season, that's a great way to participate and to support local farms, but also kind of try new things. We kind of push things on you that are not the more normal type things, right? So, but then you might get a lot of kale that you got to work with as well. We try not to throw that at you too much. Kale was cool a long time ago, but it really is kind of easy to grow because the leaves keep coming, we keep picking it. So we give it to you every other week, pretty much. So we do this a lot with volunteer groups. We have a fair number of volunteers. The hard part with when people have time to volunteer, they generally are an older community, and everything is low to the ground, right? Everything is bending over. So you can see everybody trying to find a new way to reach down and to participate. But so if you volunteer, sometimes it's about 45 minutes and then you're on with the rest of your life, right? So, because it's hard to do. So, and I'm starting to walk over like this. I got to kind of remind myself to stay with better posture as well. So. All right, and there's in an urban environment, we try to say we're uniquely urban. So one of our flagship locations is on the Holland Town Center, right in front of the AMC Theater on James Street. And literally the parking lot was tore up, and we brought in soil over the years. 2012, 12. And that's kind of where we began farming there, and we've been farming there ever since. So we're got a year-to-year lease with that, so we're kind of like land insecure in that way. So we've been searching for space to kind of like move the farm eventually. It's hard to find 2 acres in the city of Holland when people are trying to find places for housing and all these things, right? A farm in the middle of all of it is not a very high priority. So we're trying to figure out how do we stay uniquely urban. We'd love to we've looked at this site on Pine Avenue up the street, which is about a 1/4 acre. So one of the town centers 2 acres, this is a 1/4. We'd love to have this maybe as a home base for us. It's got a building, an aging building, but it's something that maybe we could use for, right now preschool is using it, but we could have a store there. We could have an event space or something like that. So that's an option for us. Zion Lutheran Church currently owns that property, and they're taking their time on giving us an answer on what the next step is. Our lease is till 2026. So see our pinch, Holland Town Center, our year-to-year lease at the whim of a landlord that is a developer, so it could be built up and be something someday. So, and this location, again, has value because it's a commercial property in the middle of a residential area. I imagine the community doesn't want to see a bunch of houses. I'm not sure what they'd want to see. They don't want to see a high-rise. The church wants to see us there, but can we afford to be there? That's the big question, right? So if you've got a connection to land, hey, let me know. We'll talk afterwards, right? So there's always that dream. So. Okay, so I'm going to go back a little bit, my journey with food. I grew up on a farm in Iowa, so you think everybody who comes from Iowa lives on a farm. Not always the case, but I just happen to, right? It was a dairy farm of 400 acres. So I have the experience of milking cows, doing that work, waking up very early. At a very young age, I was responsible for doing the feeding the young calves morning and evening. And then I was the youngest, so when the older ones left, I kind of did most of it, right? So when my parents decided to go to Hawaii on vacation, we were stuck with milking the cows and doing it all, right? But if you know dairy farming at all and farming in general, there's not a ton of money in it. So it's not something you go into for, padding your 401k or anything like that. It doesn't really happen with farming. So for my dad, I remember we would leave the house and we would go for the day. It was in the 80s, right? Interest rates were very high. And my dad bought the farm for $40,000. 160 acres at the time was $40,000. Doesn't seem like a lot of money now, but then that was a lot of money. And I remember him going out the door saying, $97. That's how much money we had to make that day to make sure the bank didn't foreclose on us, right? So that was the mentality we were sent out that day. Let's make $97. So my older brothers remember that more vividly than I do. My dad moved on to working for other farmers and doing other things, and it kind of paid the bills for the farm where the farm couldn't. But a dairy farm, the price of milk was, I don't know, I'll just say 11 cents a pound. I'm trying to figure out 11 cents a gallon maybe was what it is. And you come today, it's not much higher than that today. So really the price has kind of stayed the same. Americans like their cheap things, right? Cheap food is one of those. So, and we're kind of blessed with some cheap food. And so a lot of communities pay a lot more than around the world. They spend more for food in general than other things. So, okay. So that was my journey. So I went to Iowa State University because I thought I'm going to go back. I'm the youngest. My other brothers moved on to other things. I was going to go back and farm the family farm, right, with my dad. I got to college, and in my junior year, I realized that my dad and I don't gel, right? He liked to talk just as much as I do now as well, but we didn't talk about the same things. We didn't have the same viewpoint in life, and it wasn't about theories of the land and taking care of it. That wasn't any of it at that point. It was just, I knew I would have struggle working with my dad. So in that journey, I was a part of a fellowship of Christian athletes at Iowa State, and through that journey, on that leadership team encouraged me to go to seminary. So here I am in Holland, Michigan, right? So at Western Seminary, and in that experience, I said, sure, I'll do counseling. Don't put me in front of people. I'm good to go, right? I didn't want to be that guy that I'll do anything but being a pastor, right? So what did I do? My first church was serving as associate pastor in Hamilton, Michigan. So I stayed pretty close, right? So at Haven Church in Hamilton, if you're familiar with it, 6 miles. First, you go down to M40, first town you hit is Hamilton. So that's where I met my wife. I have almost a 16-year-old daughter. So car insurance is still pretty good right now. Talk to me next month, right? We'll see how it goes. She has her car. She's got her job. She's figuring it out. She's going to have to make more money. Anyway, and I have a 12-year-old son who we gave him a phone for some reason. That was a bad mistake. So anyway, so he's glued to it. But I'm trying to get him out in the farm more and more. So anyway, so I had this. So I've experience of working at the church for 7 years, and I thought, what if I blended my background of agriculture and ministry? I see when we donate food to the pantries at church, it was usually stuff that was in cans and high in sodium and other things. What if we grew food? What if there was a way to build community in a different way? I didn't know what that looked like. I really struggled to make a career, doing something that blended those two. I really felt the church needed, farming, gardening, and growing food. I didn't know how it would work out. When I ended up looking for, through Peter Bogart, somehow connected me through a job in Chicago, and that's how I got my first job, through a series of conversations. And I worked at the largest nonprofit farm, or largest urban farm in Chicago. So if you're familiar with Chicago, corner of Division and Clybourne, and it's like the old Cabrini Green project area. So as these buildings were coming down, these spaces were kind of being turned into something else. And so I farmed that space, again, not having a lot of vegetable growing experience, and I was the farm manager. So think about that, right? But I went to Iowa State, so I knew soil, I knew things, I knew the basics, but they trained me on growing vegetables. So a lot of the techniques and stuff I still use kind of go back to 2010 when I learned at that farm. So that journey there, that nonprofit focused on selling food to restaurants, and the unique experience about living in community there was that restaurants were willing to pay a lot of money for food. Certain restaurants valued local food. And there's places in Holland too that will buy local food, but there's places that literally would take the food that we would provide and other local farms, and that's the menu that night. And that's a chef. That's hard to do. There's not many people that do that and do it really well. And we work with quite a few of those chefs in Chicago. And on that 1 acre, it was about $100,000 in sales, mostly to restaurants. And when a farmer walked in, the chef could be it was Rick Bayless was one of them. He was a famous chef. He, on TV, traveled to Mexico and comes back with these recipes and starts telling those stories, and he's just a great storyteller. But when you walk back in the kitchen and you're bringing food, you're the star as the farmer. You walk in and you're the one that's like, how's it going? He just wants to hear about the food and the experience, and that's what I loved about that experience. I realized that in the first time that the farmer is the rock star, and that doesn't always happen, right? When you look at who's growing the food and things like that. So after a couple years, I'm still trying to come back to the church a little bit, and I had some youth ministry experience at my church experience in Hamilton. I ended up working at a youth center for, 5-6 years before I came back in 2017 here. So I worked at a youth center where they kind of tore down an old brownfield and converted it into a farm. Gary Comer Youth Center, so you think about Gary Comer is the guy that started Land's End years ago, sold it to Sears, so that the sale of that, he started giving back to the community where he came from, which is a community, predominantly an African-American community, and they just did not have access to a lot of things, education, working computers, working windows, air conditioning in the schools, so he gave back a ton of money to this community. So I worked with them and learned a lot about community, a lot about people that I didn't know before, and it was just a great experience. I feel like I was kind of coming back to my roots a little bit. All right, came back to Eighth Day Farm, right? So ultimately, I talked with Jeff Rosing, the founding director of Eighth Day. If you know Jeff, he was passionate about a lot of equitable things. He went through seminary, didn't get ordained because he was going to go live out his passion. So that's what he did. So he started Eighth Day Farm, and I'm kind of getting the best blessings of the foundation that he set. Like the locations we're at today are the locations that he worked really hard to procure and to develop those relationships. So really living out that legacy from Jeff. So we're going to come back to the slideshow now. So this is garlic planting, and this is today, right? Does this look like today? No, it's not actually today. This is what garlic will look like. That's not the same location, but you can see the garlic growing up. Gets 2-3 feet tall at some point, and then it'll put a flower, and then this crew, which is our intern crew, so college age, generally students wanting to learn about, take a different kind of summer break, learn about food experiences, local food, farming, different things, but they get an experience and they're working on the farm and they're picking the flowers off of that garlic. And about 2 or 3 weeks later, the plants will start to die and then we'll pull them out. So you kind of see a little bit of that cycle. I didn't have the picture of it, but today the garlic that we planted is about this tall. So it's coming on. It's like kind of like daffodils, the first things that kind of pop out and they fight through winter and they make it. So that's the farm. Okay, so this is a quote that's on a sign in our kitchen, and I love this quote. So, why try to explain miracles to children when you can just have them plant a garden? And this is my son. This is a little bit a while back. He got a perm now, so he's got like curly hair. But cute kid still, but he's just, but it's kind of fun. I love this idea of just like when you put a seed in the ground, if you've got healthy soil, the biology in the soil, it comes to life, and then like the seed miraculously with how it's built, it comes up, and it just like, and every seed will produce something that tastes different, that looks different. And it's just, to me, when kids grasp that, and the world comes to life in a different way. We have kids come to the farm for tours right now, and they will say, can I eat that carrot that comes right out of the ground? We're like, yeah, we washed it off, you can eat it. It's like that first experience sometimes that kids have, just not really knowing where their food comes from. So I love that picture there a little bit. So 8th Day Farm, I talked about where we sell a CSA. We do have, we sell at the farmer's market as well. So you think about the 2 acres that we grow on. I'm not trying to brag, I'm just kind of sharing the scale of what you can do with a really small space. 2 acres, and that 1/4 acre on Pine Avenue, we can sell about $170,000 in vegetables. And we donated about $20,000 back to pantries because we're trying to give back and trying to help people with food access. So just the sale of the produce, because we don't have a ton of donations, so we're not living on the donations to be able to pay salaries. We're living on growing the food to be able to do that. And so we're at the farmer's market, which is the bulk. We were kind of like, do we really want to go to the farmer's market? We're glad we did, because it really changed the model of how we grow food and interact with people. So I know that a lot of people come from Chicago and come from all over, but like there are many of you and others that come to the farmer's market on a consistent basis to look for your food. And it just, I think people just rely on that market for getting their sustenance in their life. So we do have like the internship program I mentioned. So interns, once they leave 8th Day, sometimes they become employees. I think other than me, a lot of the staff have been previous interns at the farm. We've got board members. Our board president was an intern. So we've got a lot of experience with our interns going on and doing great things. One went to, in my time, went to Republic Waste, right? He went to Republic Waste and started getting a paycheck, but realized that wasn't what he wanted to do, kind of came back to his roots. He's now at Kids Food Basket. Another one's working at Taste the Local Difference. She's doing kind of marketing there. She was working at a farm before. So if they don't go directly into farming, they're doing things a lot of times that really have an impact. So it makes a difference in their summer. I'm trying to think, any other questions about 8th Day Farm? We have a food waste collection, which we'll talk about in a bit. You guys know where I'm talking about when I say urban farm, where it's located? Yeah, good. Okay, so I'm going to pose a question to you so I can stop talking and then you can actually participate together. So we have some microphones there. So what does a healthy community look like? I just want to see, poll the room, and I pulled up Google as well, and we can kind of like share, and then we'll talk about a few things. So what do you think a healthy community looks like? Don't be shy. You don't want me talking the whole time. So, yeah.
People who care about each other and relatively equitable access to resources that make for a healthy and fulfilling life.
Okay. So caring for each other, and then access to those things that, for human fulfillment. Okay, very good. I like it.
Just a reminder that we are live and being recorded, so you're on YouTube.
So if you're comfortable with being out there, right? So, yeah.
A lot of diversity, and that's whether there's plants or people or ideas,
Yep.
but just a lot of difference.
Right. When you think about a lot of things that we do as farming, it comes back to the soil, that foundation. Diversity, if it's good in the soil, right? You don't put one plant, you put many plants, you rotate your plants for a lot of reasons, but it makes a healthier community. So yeah, people being diverse, we learn from each other very much. Very good. What else? Access to what other things? Water, yeah. Yep. Well, what's our challenge with water today? Yeah, depleting water. I mean, if we were out in the West, right, there's struggle with water, like getting access to it. Like, there's people that just don't have the rights to it, right? So they're crossing their fingers that they get the right rain so they have, access to it. Yes.
I like it when I see people who really care about their property.
Okay.
And then the exchange between neighbors about, oh, what did you do to, and that kind of thing. And so that exchange of information and trying to make their properties look wonderful.
Yeah, so beauty is a part of it, right? Yeah, and then the exchange of information, kind of sharing. So being present with each other is part of that. Yeah, that's very good. Did I miss anything in that? It's very good.
Well, I think also a healthy community has the people who work together and do things that are fruitful and help humans to thrive, so healthy foods, but also caring for the earth. And so I know that's a big part of what you do as well,
Yeah.
but have an eye towards sustainability, taking good care of all the natural resources we have and using them well.
Yeah. Yeah, very good. At 8th Day, we're certified naturally grown, which follows the same rules as organic. It's just that we don't have that organic certification. Knowing that we're year to year on a lease, when we have to move, we'd have to start over with that certification. So we use certified naturally grown. It's more of a peer-driven. So farmers certify our farm, but we buy organic seeds. We follow the same rules. There are a few modifications that we don't have to follow, but like we're in the soil, we're working in that way. So that's one way. So again, at 8th Day, what we're doing is we're loving the land and loving the people. That's kind of like our what we share. So loving the land, meaning taking care of it through healthy soil, not putting a bunch of spray on it and different things like that. Yeah. We could talk about loving people. That's kind of what we're doing right now, right? Any other things? I Googled it too as well. I'm gonna bring it up because I Googled it. I thought that's kind of fun to see what AI will tell us, right? So basic needs. So it's a lot of this is about access, right? Access to things. So access to housing, the food security, healthcare, safety and security. That's kind of like being present. When you're present with and sharing, there's a builds of safety and together. Strong social networks, a sense of belonging, inclusive environments, good jobs, affordable housing. How's AI doing? Are they doing okay? AI is doing all right? So, okay. Economic mobility, quality education, lifelong learning, safe and healthy environment, opportunities for physical activities. So think about parks, recreation, things like that. Mental health support, civic engagement. I could keep going. So cultural opportunities, strong leadership, partnerships. So a lot of the things we kind of said, but I think when you come back to it, I think a lot of it's about access. Access to certain things, right? There's access to the land. When you think about a farmer, you go to the farmer's market and you might, if you go, does anybody complain about the price of food? Does anybody? You do? Okay, all right. So I had this experience, and I'm not trying to critique anybody. If this was you, I'm sorry. We sell our cilantro. It was like $3 a bunch or 2 for $5, right? So I encourage you to buy 2 of a different herb. But $3, it is higher. It's higher than Harvest Health Food. But when somebody said, oh, I can go to Meijer, I'm like, you're going to spend more gas driving over to Meijer to get a bunch of cilantro, right? So But basically what somebody told me was they didn't value that food, and they're telling the farmer that it was cheaper to go to Meijer to buy it. And I just stopped the person. I figured there was a way they phrased it, so I felt like I could engage a little bit. And I said, please don't ever tell a farmer that their stuff is not worth that. And here's why. I said, if you want to go to Meijer and you get a $1 bunch of cilantro, that's up to you. But who grew it? Who was the farmer? How many hands did it have to touch to get there? How far did it come from? And if I look at all those things along the step and you want to only pay $1 for it, that's a lot of sacrifices along the way that person that actually had their hands on it, that made the bunch, what did that person get paid? What environment were they working in? And I think that's a little bit about a healthy community. What things do we have access to? Some things are worth paying for, right? That's kind of what I'm not telling you to just spend more money at the farmer's. Well, yeah, do spend more money at the farmer's market. But I think it's about valuing food in that way. Yeah.
In terms of value, and you talk about money, but wouldn't it be good if the person had already been educated to think that not having fake fertilizer or inorganic products, wouldn't it be better if from the beginning a person had been looking for something that had been grown in clean dirt and had clean water and clean air, so that you didn't have to talk about price per bunch? Because some of that value is because we pay some people not what they're worth when they're working. And anyway, it's just an idea.
Yeah, right. I mean, it really is. It's about valuing the farmer and value the farmer's workers and the person who actually touches the food. It very much is that. And I think educating about, and I think part of the way we do educate that is like when we share food together, right? As a community, like it's what we do in the church. A lot of times we share meals, communion, we're sharing, we're participating together. But if you share food, it's good food. If you share really good food, you convince people just by how much better it is. When that flavor, when the nutrients are there, it's so much better. And sometimes it's just that participating and sharing that good helps with that. At our farmers market, and we do have a question. Can I go say one more thing, or do you?
Just comment.
Okay, go ahead.
So I had an aha moment probably a decade ago when had been at the farmers market to get raspberries and thought, $8 or whatever it might have been. And but then Joyce invited me to come pick raspberries at her canes at her house. And I went out there and just slogged raspberries up my elbows and things like that. And then I gladly paid the $8 or whatever it was for raspberries because I realized this is a lot of work, and I'm sweating on the mushed raspberries that I'm collecting in the bottom of this container. And so that piece of it too, of realizing what it costs me is nothing compared to the investment that you and those who harvest all of this stuff put in. So
Correct. Yeah. And there's value to that. I mean, somebody can produce it for very little, and we'll kind of get to that in a second too. But yeah, thank you for sharing. I love aha moments that happens to us at all points in our life. At the farmer's market right now, there's, let's say, an older farmer, they're charging less for their product. And they're saying, oh, they can go to Meijer and get it cheap. At the farmer's market, you're not competing with Meijer. You can't compete with Meijer, right? Because Meier's got a lot of different workers, a lot of different systems to keep that food as cheap as they can. And I don't know exactly where all of it comes from, right? So that's part of it. When you go to the farmer's market, you know where your food comes from. But like what I'm saying with this older farmer that wants to keep the price really low, I'm encouraging this farmer to charge more. Even though his farm is paid off, and that's the point, his farm is paid off. He doesn't need to charge as much because he's got a lot of money coming in the bank. But I think he's like, oh, I bring 300, I don't want to like go home with 100. No, bring 100 and just charge more, right? That's kind of like, you make the same amount of money, you can work less, you're 70 years old, you don't need to work as hard. But we can do some more education with that, and I think that the point is that a young farmer coming in, the access to the land, I don't know what the going rate for acre is, 20,000, maybe he's on the low end for a lot of farmland. And if 8th Day was to buy our location on the north side, we're talking like 200 to 250,000 for 2 acres of land, commercial property, but so access to it. So that new farmer that starts out, it's going to start out with debt. They can't produce that food without paying the bank. They're going to be walking out the door every day saying $120 now, $130. That's how much they have to pay to get to the bank. So food has value because they have to be able to pay their bills. So access to food and access to land is part of that. So, any other comments or questions, thoughts? Yeah.
Could I play devil's advocate here?
Sure.
Hearing you talk about small urban farms on small patches of land reminds me of the crofts in Scotland, where I've spent a lot of time, where historically food was produced on small patches of land, such as what you're describing. But in the long run, that doesn't really economically work. If you want to produce affordable food for hungry people, industrial scale farming is really vastly more efficient. Now, when it comes to animals, I mean, we may choose to pay more for eggs that are from free-range chickens, and we may not like factory farm pigs and so forth. I understand that. But when we're talking about plants, make me a case for why it pays to be done on a small urban scale by hand, and why that makes any sense.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that all situations have to be like Eighth Day Farm, like by hand, like literally planting the garlic like this. I mean, there are machines that do it much quicker and a much larger scale. So I think maybe the argument of a small scale, I don't know what we'd call small. Small could be 5 to 10 acres, right? So Eighth Day is teeny small. But to put it in perspective, if we're doing 170,000 an acre, a cornfield typically does about 2,000 per acre, right? That's the revenue that they're bringing in. So I think you are true that there is a lot of efficiency that happens at a larger scale. I'm trying to develop my thought without being too rambling here. It happens at a larger scale, it's more efficient, but look at what crops we are actually growing. We're growing corn. What are a lot of these products being made into? Right, so we're not actually making food into them unless you count soda as food. We're making ethanol and other things, but a lot of the food that comes off of the land that our government uses to subsidize to make the food cheaper is not, it might be more efficient to grow it and all the ways we do it, but the ways that you have to use the land and do it is not conducive to a healthier environment. So I would make the case, can we grow food in small urban farms? I can't feed all of Holland in my urban farm. I don't think there's enough land in Holland to actually do that, right? We have to go outside the city limits to do that, so you're correct. Yes.
To add to Dave's question, maybe what you could see this as, instead of we want to have a lot of 2-acre urban plots, is that every time there is one, more people learn about, is that a positive insect? What is that?
That's a monarch
Okay.
butterfly, yeah.
That's
All right.
very disconcerting.
It's one we don't want to see go away, let's put it that way, yeah.
But I think if we looked at it as,
a good
actually,
question,
that
though.
farm is a seed, and as a result, maybe more people will go to their farmer's market. Maybe that seed will mean that more big farmers say, wow, it looks like people don't want to eat fertilizer as much. Yeah. So maybe that's a way of thinking about it, but I am glad you brought up corn, and that could be a whole other topic. But so maybe that's a glass half full.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the push. I think that obviously if you have a front yard, you can do a little bit, right? But not everybody has that ability, the time to be able to, like, the sun's on the wrong side. There's just a lot of problems with that, right? And that's, again, it's about access to the land. In Chicago, the issue we had was when somebody threw an old battery out, well, then there's lead on the property. So you're constantly fighting lead, arsenic, and some of those other things that are sitting there. So you got to go out to the urban or the more rural country to be able to grow food. There are communities that have given everybody chickens. And, one thing is there's less, when you feed a chicken, this is just one anecdotal evidence here, but you give a lot of people chickens, there's less food waste hitting the landfill, and everybody gets enough eggs, right? I mean, and you can live, there's a lot of calories that come, you can produce more calories than kind of is being provided for you. So, but I think there's communities that engage together, knowing more about their food. I think that's where the answer is. The average age of the farmer is 58 years old. I'm thinking today. Like 5 years ago it was 57 and a half, right? So that average age is kind of creeping up there. That efficient farm is owned by a lot of aging farmers. Who's buying that land now? And it's a lot of corporations, and the corporations are farming that land. How are they taking care of it? Can a corporation take care of a large piece of land better than a small farmer? I would argue that the small farmer is going to love and take care of that land a lot better than a large corporation. That's my beef. It probably doesn't really answer your question because it's about efficiency, right? But I think ultimately we were an agrarian society a long time ago, because now we're 1% or farmers. We used to be a higher percentage, and we're just losing that connection. So.
Back here.
We got one back here with a microphone. Yeah.
As you talk, I'm thinking about the intersection between access, economics, and persuasion in the light of the culture that you're talking to. So I heard a great illustration of this a couple years ago. A man, organic farmer, was interviewed, happened to be the farmer who had the farm adjoining where my husband grew up. This is southeast Minnesota, where there are lots and lots and lots of very good Dutch dairy farmers. Of course, as we all know, dairy has taken a beating in the market. So the interviewer said to this farmer, so are you trying to persuade your fellow farmers in the neighborhood? Now, these are not easily persuaded people. I know this because I'm married to one. And he said, nope, I just tell them I'm making money.
Making money. I know you had a follow-up comment. I do think there are farms, like use Shadyside Farm as an example locally, that's doing organic growing food on a larger scale with pasture raised. We can get into that too a little bit, but they're doing it on a larger scale and growing their soil organic matter, growing the health of the soil in a slightly larger way than thousands of acres. Yeah.
I grew up on a farm in Nebraska, neighbor.
Yeah.
I watched my father, because I'm old now, I watched my father move into industrial farming in the 50s, where we began to use DDT and all the chemical things. I watched my father die of leukemia later because of the use of all the chemicals. I think we underestimate, when you ask the question, what does a healthy community look like? When we ask industrial farming to be the primary source of our nutrition, we're doing that at the cost of health to both the farmer and the land, and we're doing that at a cost to ultimately our society in saying we only value that which is cheap.
Yeah, I grew up, my dad didn't do a lot of spray and then got into it a lot more. So we still did no-till farming, which is like less tillage in the land. Then I just remember I was the bottle calf guy, so like I would dip my hand into a 5-gallon bucket of milk, put the nipple on and go feed the calves. One day I was kind of cleaning up the cans above that milk, and it was a can of Agent Orange. Is that DDT? That's what the same? So it was Agent Orange, it was above that, and guess what? It was empty. Why was it empty? It had rusted out. And I just remember like how many times did I put my hand in this milk that might have had this dripping, or I was exposed to it so much. My father passed away of esophageal cancer, and one of his close friends, same story, didn't smoke, a little overweight. In 2022, had an experience with kidney cancer. I'm young, 46 years old, and my doctor says it's not environmental, it's probably genetic. Haven't had those tests, but I was exposed to a lot of stuff in my time, so I don't know. So, yeah.
So these are all super comments, and I love the idea of this small farm and volunteers harvesting food that's distributed at farmers market and all. That's great. You did give us an example of how milk cost about today what it did in your dad's era.
Right.
And that's an example of the point I was making, that industrial scale farming has meant that the average American family today devotes a much smaller proportion of its income to food than was the case a half century or a century ago. And so that's the upside of doing things on a big scale. because we also care about poverty and about alleviating hunger.
Yeah.
And so there's kind of trade-offs here.
Yeah.
I don't like the way those cows are treated maybe in industrial scale dairy production,
Yeah.
but it does mean there's fewer hungry people.
Have you ever seen a dairy farm today? It's abuse. I mean, the cows only live 4 to 5 years. When I was growing up, a cow lived 18 years because we cared for it. Now, you milk them 3 times a day, you inject them with all kinds of substances to produce milk at a rapid rate, and they die.
This is a dairy farmer by me, actually. So this is my land, in Hamilton. I told the farmer, if you move the crop from alfalfa, then I'll farm it. I'll do it myself. Whatever. I know how to farm. I don't do 8 acres. I do it all way too hard and impossible on 2 acres. But he tore it up one day. I was at work, put manure down, tilled it up, put corn in, and then a few days later, this is going down. I don't know what it is, but I know it was a GMO corn, and it was this. I don't know, 120 feet long. Very efficient. Very, very efficient. This is what we get. So another thing is, what's a healthy community look like? What's wrong with this picture? This is Dollar General.
Argentina, Ukraine, and India.
But it says source certified. Do they just kind of mix them all together? What do they do, right? So we just don't know where our food comes from, right? And I have bees, I produce honey. We don't need, large scale or not, we don't need to do this, right? So and who knows, is this real, right? I mean, you can kind of fake honey a little bit too, so. Again, really quickly with some of this. So soil, just kind of making the case, like access is huge, access to land, large scale, small scale. Access is a challenge. Like land is being kind of grabbed up for housing and for factories and for storage of data and for Amazon and AI and all these things, right? A lot of energy is being used for these things. So, but a teaspoon of soil, not dirt, a teaspoon of soil. Soil is life. 100 million to 100 billion bacteria in that one little teaspoon. There's a lot of living things that are happening in that space. So the more you can, there's fungal, hyphae, protozoa, nematodes, other beneficial things. Some don't work, but they're there, they're present, they help break down, tie up carbon, do all those kind of things. This is a compost pile that we made at the town center. Again, we're looking for space to move our compost pile. So if anybody knows, we want to move our composting off of that. But this is in May of a couple years ago. Beautiful, beautiful stuff. So it grows, we try to we collect food waste, we turn it into food that we grow, basically, right? It's that cycle, closing that gap a little bit. Can you do that in a larger scale? Well, people don't throw their stuff in their garbage and they find a place to go with it. We can, in a larger scale, do a lot more with it. So it's an option. So again, that's our food waste program. You can see what it looks like. This is, we do get a lot from Community Action House. I'm not trying to knock anything, but like when stuff is kind of on its way out already, sometimes it's donated and it's got to go somewhere. So instead of going in the landfill, we get it, we turn it into food. So a lot of these things you can kind of see. You might look at it and go, oh, it has a lot of life. This is actually a compostable phone case, by the way, too. It was in there. That's why the picture was taken. The stuff is yellowing. It's clearly on its way out. It's no good, right? So there are ways that I suppose of food kitchens and places could salvage some of this work. It is more work to do that. But there's other food coming in. So that is an inefficient system, but I'm looking at this saying, how far did this food have to travel to get to this point right here? So a lot of this stuff, I pulled the sticker off, it's a different country. It's come from Mexico, it's come from Argentina, wherever. And we then ends up in my compost. So it comes from a long ways away to do that. So the system, much more local system, would be more efficient for a lot of reasons, right? So who's growing it to valuing those things. So this is my pasture now. Saw the big boom sprayer? I took it over. I said, farmer, I told you, I don't want you to farm that way. I put it back. So this is what it looks like now. This was last spring. A local farmer brought his sheep on the property, and a little bit later, when we moved the sheep to one paddock to the another, he, when he moved it from one paddock to another, you couldn't even see the sheep. The grass was so tall, right? So the idea of farming in this way is much different than tearing up the soil, putting corn in, tearing it up the soil, putting corn in. This is in kind of like a pasture-based system where sheep they'll rotate, they graze. Let's say the grass is this tall. 3-4 feet tall in the spring. They cut this much down off of it. Well, there's a root system that's just that tall as well, going out and down. When you clip that much, those roots are clipped off as well. And that breaks down in the soil. It creates places for microbes to break it down, air and water to get into the soil. So it creates, and then you rotate the sheep around so they're not coming back to the worms that might be in the manure and different things like that. So making sure that they're healthy as well. So if you see a pasture, you drive through and they're like, oh, it's beautiful pasture and it's really highly grazed and the grass is this far. It's not really building soil. It's not feeding the next generation for grass, and there's worms. I'm sure that farmer has trouble with worms, and so that's just kind of like one picture. I'm not saying this is the perfect, but you can see the dairy farmer in the background. So my driveway is about 800 to 1,000 feet long. The dairy farmer, the irrigation pipes, the dairy farmer. We're talking about dairies a lot, right? So I'm not trying to critique them at all, but like these cows don't see open air unless the baby calves are right in here. So there's no open air for any of those things, right? So, I mean, they have the buildings are open on the end. Don't get me wrong; they're not cooped up, but they are cooped up. Basically, the animals don't use this pasture. That's all corn and used for silage. But they did very impressive. They have this pile here from here to there. I don't know how far that is, 400 feet or more, and that pile is as tall as the building. That's the silage that they bring in and stuff like that. So, yeah.
When you use an urban farm, do you have concerns about being close to where they come with snow and salt and other products that we put on our streets and end up in the water supply?
Yeah, I imagine there's issues with those things. Fortunately, at the town center, the parking lot kind of shapes away, so anything that like they throw on kind of would wash away back into the drains. That's just because the parking lot originally was set up that way. There probably are some risks in an urban space, like you're talking about your front lawn and stuff like that. There might be some of that. Yeah, I know. In Chicago, people always walked by and said, "Aren't you concerned about all the exhaust getting in your vegetables and all that stuff?" I'm like, "Oh, I never really thought about that." And then I thought, well, we're breathing it right now, right? So I don't know. It's like, it's a good question, but I don't think there's that much risk unless, depending on where it's located. You want to make sure that you're kind of downwind from things, to put it in that way. Yeah, we always want to watch that, especially if you're growing in your own environment. You kind of want to you don't know what was using that soil first. Did somebody throw a battery out, or did somebody, what's been disposed there? Was there a house that was torn down first and there was lead in the soil? Who knows? But you just got to be careful. And I'm not saying, again, urban environments or urban farms are great. I'm not saying that urban is the answer. I think it's about coming back to the access is some of it. So access to water, a healthy thing, the PFAS and all these things that we're spraying. That farmer with the irrigation pipes, is my water table going to start getting lower and lower? And I struggle to have water at my house. I haven't tested, but my neighbors had high nitrates. I need to be testing my water, getting a filter on. I probably have high nitrates in my soil, which contributed to maybe some of the cancer challenges I've had, right? Air, you always think of air being the problem, but I think water's probably more of a challenge, but there are air issues. But where do we have landfills? Think about where do we have landfills, where do we have things that are polluting the environment, generally in poorer areas. So you got to think about these things, right? We want cheap things, but where do we put some of this stuff? It's in areas that where poverty happens. So yeah, we just kind of make it a point. But one of our CSA shares early in the season, tomatoes, and just make you ready for summer. That's good. Sharing food together is part of about a healthy community, right? Partaking, and you guys have a meal once a week here. It looks like just like being together is a part of that. That chef sharing the cool things of what farmers bring, but doing wonderful work with it. These are our intern crew from a couple of years ago. A very eager group and very, very energetic. That was a fun year. So they've got their awards for their names that they were given. So that's the plate. So sharing food. We have a fundraiser in the fall. It's not a very clear picture, but we do like a wood fire pizza. We would normally do the event at our location like this, but the Holland Town Center location is just a little more cumbersome to get the rules and regulations through. So putting it lightly. And then but then we went to this different space here with the Kroll family, offering up their space, and it's just been an amazing way to build community in that way. So Let's see. I want to get to this. So, supplemental nutrition assistance program about access. So, people give a hard time, and you can talk politics here, however you want. A lot of money goes into this, right? I don't know what the number is. I didn't look that up. But for every dollar spent on this, about $1.50 comes back to the economy, kind of churning it back. So, if we give people food, we call it an entitlement program, call it what you want. There's folks that just don't have access to food in general. I mean, there's foods that shouldn't be on the list. We can debate that all we want, like chips and other things, but some people just don't have food, and I think this SNAP program allows for access to healthy food. And so I think that's a program that I would love to continue to have more funding for in our Farm Bill, which is coming up. So if we want to take action, the Farm Bill has a huge impact on these things. So. I want to use a good example of another, what's happening in our community, Trinity Health System. There is a farm now in Muskegon that's kind of following this model. This is probably numbers, this is off their website, but it's for the farms over in the west or the east side of the state. But they basically use an aggregate CSA. So we do a CSA from our farm, all the ingredients for the most part come from our farm, unless we tell you that it's from somewhere else for some reason. But they take source from a lot of local farmers, and it doesn't necessarily have to be organic. I don't know that rule or what they have that, but they just are sourcing from different folks, and they're providing shares for like 400 to 500 in some locations. So 400 to 500 people are getting these shares. The hospital has to give back, so they're sharing back the benefits of what they're making to the community. And well, I think the beauty of this is in Muskegon, I think 80% of the 35 shares that they're doing are subsidized. So their hospital is providing those shares at $1,000 a year. So look at that cost that's kind of giving back, and then they're buying from the local farmers, from Shadyside Farm, Eighth Day Farm, and other local farms up in Muskegon. We've been kind of going up there for Eighth Day as part of our mission, taking care of people. I know we got to drive to Muskegon to give it, but I feel like we're providing access to a really cool program that I'd really want to be successful. If we could cut ourselves out of it and other farms in Muskegon provide the food, I'm all for it. But for now, I want to see it successful. I think it's a cool idea. So it's just one area where I feel like that in our community, when you picture this, could we see this in our community, right, where more people get access to healthy food? There's people that can't afford a $500 CSA share with Eighth Day Farm. They can't go to Visser Farm and get their market card and get it cheaper because they could buy it ahead of time. So I think that's been a big challenge, is again, access to that food. And I think when you love people and you love your community, I think when people have access to healthy food, it's medicine. It's a lot of that kind of work. They're going to be healthier, they're going to be happier, they're going to spend time together, they're going to share their things. Another thing I love about gardening, and I know it's volunteering, a story that my boss in Chicago had one time. He said he was running a work group, and they were looking for a farm manager at the time, and so he was running the farm, and he was busy off doing the recycling things, because it was the largest nonprofit recycler in Chicago as well. And but he was lack of a farm manager, so he was doing the physical work, talking with the group, and somebody said, hey, that guy over there, he's really good at knowing vegetables. You should hire him. And he kind of laughed, and he's like, I don't know the corporation, but I think it was like he was like the president of AT&T or something like that. Like, he had plenty of money and had a really good job. But I tell that story because when you farm together, you don't need to be, it breaks down a lot of barriers. Language doesn't really matter, because you can teach people without English. It's not the only language that's out there. And you don't need, if you can have a lot of knowledge about gardening and make a lot of money or not make a lot of money, and it doesn't matter. I think when you come together, there's that free access to information sharing is a beautiful thing. So it breaks down barriers, and everybody's on their hands and knees. Everybody's getting dirty knees. Looks like they've been praying all day. But I think it's a beautiful picture when we do these things together. And that was my last slide. I'm trying to think of, no. Building another community thing. So this is a house for sale. So you want to buy a house on 208 10th Street. My realtor, because we're looking for land. I've mentioned that 4 times now, haven't I? Mm-hmm. So she sent me this picture, said, hey, look at picture number, 33 of this thing. It's like it's advertising for the Holland Farmers Market to sell this house close to the market, right? guess what the front picture is, right? This is the picture that was shown, 8th Day Farm. So it's my coworker, John, and it was a winter market from, looks like almost last year. It could have been this year. But I don't know, it's kind of again, when to sell a house, that's a beautiful thing, right? That's building good community, kind of promoting the thing. So when I think about the money that changes hand, I know it's not all about money, but sometimes it is. The money that changes hands on a Saturday or a Wednesday, it's a lot of money on a Saturday. It's an economic engine that kind of continues to feed this community. So supporting your local farmer, they've got kids, they've got, all right, I'm done. So look at this. Look at these guys. They're in our midst right here. They didn't know they were going to be here, but this is another garlic planting day. So we started and ended with the garlic planting, right? So anyway. Any questions? Again, I'm trying to think of anything I've missed for. So any thoughts that anybody else has? Yeah.
So one thing that I was wondering about is the change in distribution from local to large scale and now kind of coming back to local. Because I feel like some of the challenges, and I'm not involved in farming at all, other than going to the farmer's market. It seems like some of the challenges for a small local farm would be networking and distribution for outlets to get the food to the people who need it, or to restaurants or to stores, that kind of thing. And you see some of that, especially in sort of local chains like Meijer, who are trying to local source more fruits and vegetables. But I see, it seems like in all these things that we're talking about, one of the biggest challenges might be changing from this global distribution that now is so established back into local networking and distribution. Can you talk to that?
Yeah, I think there's been a lot of conversation about local distribution in the federal level. I think there's programs. I'm part of a farm service agency. I'm on a committee just about urban farming, and a lot of the new programs have been about direct marketing initiatives, because smaller farmers and even larger farmers, they have to if they're selling fruits, vegetables that are specialty crops, they're selling them direct to the consumer. There's a cost that sometimes it's just hard to recoup because you don't have these connections, and they're spending extra money going a little bit further to do it, or for whatever reason. So there's a lot of initiative to try to encourage more local food into the system. I think, like that example we had with Trinity Health, it kind of brings it a little bit more local. It helps, but even in that network, that farm up in Muskegon is still trying to build that network of small farms to support that work, right? So it is a challenge. I know that locally, Plant Lab is one of our board members, is the owner of Plant Lab on 18th and Washington Square area. There's a little farm stand that's open at least 5 days a week there, and you can access local farms, produce, and different things. It's called a farm stop, so it's like self-serve. It's a hard access point. So one of the challenges they've had is how do we get access to the farmers so we can actually get more products into here? There's a logistical challenges of storing and shelving and all that stuff, because it's not a grocery store. Right now it's more of a farm stand, but that is a challenge. But there's models that people are trying to make food more local. And I think those things like Washington Square, is it a food desert? I don't know. I don't know the technical definition of a food desert, but it really, if you're in walking distance, you're a long ways from Family Fare over there on Washington Square. So you could access some healthy food for supper, for different things. That is one option. I'm talking about myself again. I don't know if I really answered your question, but there was a lot of movement towards that getting the local food, making it a smaller regional system. There's always a lot of grants out there trying to promote more of a regional food system. I don't know, but I don't know if I have any other new answers for you. Yeah.
Thank you, Andy.
Yeah.
Need to thank you for today. Thank you very much. I'm sure we all know that tulip time is starting soon. But what happens after tulip time is that the farmer's market opens outdoors again, where you can also find Andy. Thank you very much. A couple announcements. First of all, we have a special event today that Adult Education is sponsoring. So we encourage you after worship to grab some pizza and go to the chapel. Phil Mark Hartman will be here from the Humanity for Prisoners. When he was here before with his presentation, he offered to come back and show the documentary Wronged, the Maurice Carter story, which really kind of was the impetus for starting Humanity for Prisoners. And so that documentary will be shown in the chapel after worship today. And then next week, I invite you to come back next week when Deb Harsma, David will introduce Deb next week, the astronomer. Fascinating discussion, I'm sure. Wonders of the universe and multiverse. If the universe wasn't enough for you, we're also going to talk about the multiverse. So please join us next week as well with Deborah Harsma. Then, I can tell you that Bruce is really sick today. So we really need your help in helping to set up for Pizza Sunday. So if you are able, we need 3 rows with 5 tables each and 8 chairs around each table. If you could really help us with that today, we would really appreciate it. So thank you very much. We hope to see you later at the movie and next week for Deb Harsma. Thank you. Thank you, Andy.
What is the movie?
Pardon? What is the movie? It is the story of Maurice Carter, an individual who was wrongly accused, spent time in prison. And so it's really his story